The wind howled through the pine trees of Willow Creek as the widow Anna Cole tightened her shawl around her shoulders, her little boy clutching her hand. The cabin she and her late husband had built stood quiet now, the fields bare, the fire cold. Winter was coming fast, and she knew she couldn't face it alone. The townsfolk had whispered behind her back since Thomas died in that logging accident, some saying she should leave, others pitying her in silence. But Anna had a son to raise, a home to protect, and a promise she'd made to her dying husband. Don't let him grow up afraid of the world. That promise burned in her heart every day. It was on a cold afternoon that she first saw him, the stranger chopping wood near the edge of town. Broad-shouldered, quiet, and with eyes that carried years of loneliness, the lumberjack was known only as Jack Rowan. He kept to himself, speaking to no one except the forest and the sound of his axe. The rhythm of his chopping echoed like a heartbeat through the valley. Rumor had it he'd once had a family, but the war had taken them. Anna didn't know if that was true, but she saw something in him, a silence that mirrored her own. That evening, when the town marshal came riding up her path, everything changed. "Anna," he said, "word's out the landowners are coming next month. They want proof there's a man running this farm, or they'll take it." Anna's breath hitched. Her husband's name wasn't on the deed, and alone she had no legal standing to keep the homestead. Unless you've got a husband, or at least someone willing to stand for you, they'll seize it. The marshal's words struck her like lightning. She spent the night pacing by the fire, her son asleep in her arms, wondering what choice she had. At dawn, she walked into the pines, the smell of sap and sawdust thick in the air. Jack was there, swinging his axe like it was an extension of his soul. "Mr. Rowan," she said softly. He stopped, wiping his brow, and turned. His eyes, a stormy grey, met hers. "Ma'am?" he asked. She swallowed hard. I need to ask you something," she stammered, clutching her shawl tighter. "It's foolish, maybe even desperate, but I've got no one else." He said nothing, only waited. "Can you pretend to be my son's father?" The words trembled out of her like fragile glass. "Just for a while. The landowners are coming, and they'll take everything if they think I'm alone." Jack stared at her, expression unreadable. Then he looked down at the little boy beside her, a child with wide blue eyes and a curious gaze. "Your boy?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. "His name's Samuel." Jack knelt down slowly, his rough hands resting on his knees. "Hello, Samuel," he said gently. The boy blinked, then smiled shyly. Something in Jack's chest stirred, a feeling he hadn't known in years. He stood, his jaw tight. "All right," he said finally. "I'll do it." In the days that followed, Jack moved into the cabin's spare room, and for the first time in years, laughter returned to its walls. He chopped wood, fixed fences, and even built a new cradle for Samuel, whose giggles filled the air like sunlight through leaves. Anna watched him quietly, her heart warming despite herself. The townsfolk noticed too, the widow and the lumberjack walking side by side, sharing quiet words and soft glances. Some whispered that she'd found love again, others scoffed. But Anna didn't care. For the first time since Thomas's death, she felt safe. Then one evening, while Jack sat carving a wooden toy for Samuel, he spoke. "Why'd you pick me, Anna?" "There are plenty of men in town." She smiled faintly, staring into the fire. "Because you didn't look at me the way they do," she said softly. "You looked at me like you understood what it's like to lose something you can't get back." Jack's carving knife stopped mid-cut. He nodded slowly. "I did," he said, voice low. "I lost my wife and little girl during the fever. Haven't spoken much since." Silence filled the room, but it wasn't empty. It was full of shared pain, shared healing. Anna reached out and placed her hand over his. "You don't have to be alone anymore, Jack," she whispered. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, time stood still. But before anything more could be said, the distant thunder of horses echoed. The landowners had arrived early. "Stay inside," Jack told her, grabbing his coat and stepping into the fading light. As he walked toward the riders, axe still in his belt, Anna stood at the window clutching her son. She watched the man who'd once been a stranger stand tall against those who sought to take everything from her. And in that moment, she knew this wasn't just pretending anymore. It was something real, something that might just save them all. The men on horseback dismounted with smirks on their faces, boots sinking into the mud. "We're here to see about this land," the leader barked, holding a stack of papers. "We heard the widow ain't got a man to claim it." Jack stood firm, his shadow stretching across the dirt as the sun sank low. "She's got one now," he said evenly, voice steady as the earth beneath them. The man laughed. "You, the hermit lumberjack? You think that makes this place yours?" Jack stepped forward, eyes hard. "I think it makes me her husband, and this her home." Anna's heart pounded in her chest as she peeked from the doorway. The tension was thick, the air sharp. The man sneered, flipping through his papers. "You got proof?" he asked mockingly. Jack didn't answer with words. Instead, he turned and called out, "Anna!" She stepped out, Samuel in her arms. Her voice didn't shake when she said, "Yes, this is my husband. Jack Rowan, we run this land together." The men glanced at one another, surprised by the fire in her tone. For a moment, silence hung. Then the leader scoffed. "Fine. You got 30 days to file the papers in town. After that, if you ain't legal, we'll be back." When they rode off, the silence that followed was deafening. Jack stood still, his jaw clenched. Anna stepped closer, her hand trembling slightly. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. He turned to her slowly. "I said I'd help you, and I meant it." The flicker of emotion in his eyes made her chest tighten. "But you risked your life," she began, but he cut her off gently. "You and your boy gave me something worth standing for again." Over the next weeks, they worked together like they'd always belonged. Jack taught Samuel how to carve wood. Anna mended his torn shirts and cooked by the fire. Each night laughter grew louder, and the walls of grief began to crumble. The snow came early that year, blanketing the world in silver. And one night, as the wind howled outside, Jack looked at Anna and said quietly, "You know, it doesn't have to be pretend anymore." Her breath caught. "Jack," he stepped closer, his voice soft but sure, "I want to be here for him, for you, if you'll let me." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the breaking of something heavy that had weighed on her soul. She reached out, taking his hand. "Then stay," she whispered. "Stay with us." And he did. When spring came, the papers were signed for real, not under false names or for protection, but for love. The townsfolk stopped whispering. The boy had a father, and the widow had found her peace again. Jack rebuilt the barn that summer, his laughter echoing through the valley. Samuel followed him everywhere, calling him Pa without hesitation. And sometimes at dusk, Anna would stand by the porch watching them, her heart full. The man who'd once been lost in the forest had found his home in the sound of a child's laughter and the touch of a woman who believed in him. As the story of Anna and Jack spread through Willow Creek, it wasn't told as one of desperation, but of hope, of second chances, of what happens when two broken souls decide to rebuild together. People came to say that love doesn't always come softly. It sometimes comes in the swing of an axe, the whisper of a promise, and the courage to pretend until pretending becomes the truth. And as the sun dipped behind the pines one evening, Jack lifted Samuel onto his shoulders, grinning up at Anna. "You saved me," he said quietly. She smiled. "No, Jack, you saved us." To every heart watching this story today, don't forget, love can find you again, even in the ruins. And if you believe in second chances, subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind you hope is never too late.